All right, good morning, everybody. It's Thursday morning's edition of Ask the Master Auto Technician, and I get a lot of questions about the 5-4-3 valve Ford engines and changing spark plugs. Let me tell you a little bit about it. It's the spark plugs are a long-reach spark plug, and they have a tendency, they're not like any spark plug you've ever seen before. They have a tendency to break off into the cylinder head. And that's the problem about them. And that's why Ford originally said change the spark plugs every 100,000 miles. And when people would go to tear them apart, change the spark plugs because they start misfiring, they'd break off. And when you have to charge a customer an hour or more per hole to pull the spark plug that's broken out of it, it can get rather expensive. It's expensive enough to change the spark plugs on it. If I'm not mistaken, it's around 4 hours labor, and that's around $400 plus parts to change spark plugs in it. So you can have $600 to $800 easily because these spark plugs are not cheap. I want to say they're 15 to 20 bucks a piece. They're not cheap. And then you have to put boots on them. And here's the catch. When you go to pull them out, if you wait 100,000 miles, they're going to break on you. So please, if you don't know what you're doing, don't do it. Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. I have them come in all the time, people that try to pull their own spark plugs out. They'll go in there, they'll start taking them out, and all of a sudden they'll hear it go snap. And they go, and then they decide, oh, the heck with it, and they push it back down, put it back together again, bring it to me and go, it's misfire now, I don't know what's wrong with it. And I go look at it, and I say, you've been working on it, haven't you? Well, yeah. Well, people don't like to tell me they've worked on a car, but once you work on one and once you break it, there's a certain procedure I have to go about doing to get the part out. It's a special tools. I have 2 or 3 of them because I can only do about 10 spark plugs before it wears out and I have to buy another one. They don't give them away to me. But so what we've developed at James Auto Center is a way to get these spark plugs out without having to use that special tool, without having to charge you an hour for every hole that breaks off a spark plug hole. And we do it, the spark plug breaks off in the hole. We've developed a way of doing it that is contrary to what you, if you've ever worked on cars, have been taught in the automotive repair industry. One thing you've been taught in the automotive repair industry, if you've worked any time at all in there, is never take spark plugs out of a car that the engine is warm. It's not, you should always take them out when they're at ambient temperature. Well, that's one thing we changed. We don't do that. The other thing is they tell you to never, ever use a impact gun to remove spark plugs. Well, we threw that out the door too. So what we're doing is we're doing 2 things that are just the opposite of what they taught me back in the 70s and taught, they still teaching in schools right now. They'll tell you to never do this. But what would end up happening is we learned the hard way after trying to do everything the way we were taught the old way, that we started doing some research on the internet. We found out that the most successful way to be able to remove these spark plugs is to make sure you put some sort of carbon removal chemical into the cylinder combustion chamber the night before. So if a customer brings me a car to have a spark plugs changed on a Monday night before we go home, we take General Motors top engine cleaner, which you can buy from General Motors, or you can buy it from Ford. They have a top engine cleaner as well. Or you can go to the local parts store. This is my favorite to buy. It's called I'm trying to remember who makes it. It's called Intake Valve Cleaner. And I'm trying to remember, anyway, they sell it at the parts store. And you just spray it, it's an aerosol can, and you spray it down the throttle body to the engine, just about, the whole can, till it just about dies. You know, you have the car running at idle and you just keep spraying, and it just barely runs, and you're trying to get it in every cylinder, and you're trying to get it where to get on this carbon and get soaked into this carbon. It smells like kerosene is what it smells like. And they tell you to let it sit for an hour to use it, but I let it sit all night. And that's what we do. We let it sit all night, and the next morning we fire the engine up just enough to get it warm. Probably make it run for maybe 2 minutes, and then we shut it off. And then we remove the coils. And there's 8 coils. You have to remove the coils, and we put and the coils that we're going to remove, we're not going to put the boots back on. There's boots on there. They're interchangeable. They're designed to have the boots replaced. When you pull them out, there's a resistor in each one of those boots along with a spring. That resistor has a tendency to become damaged, especially when you remove it and you end up getting interference or misfires down the road. So please, if you're going to change your spark plugs and you're listening to what I have to say on the 5.4 engine, make sure you have 8 spark plugs and make sure you get the new design spark plugs that Ford is putting out. Finally, Ford came out with new design spark plugs to go in there that won't break. Champion was the only one that came out with spark plugs that wouldn't break, but the success ratio on Champion spark plugs, in my case, is about 80%. That means 20% of the ones I work on are coming back with misfires, usually within the first 4 weeks because there's the plugs. I can't explain it. Champion spark plugs just do this. If you talk to technicians, they know what I'm talking about. Champion spark plugs are a 3-piece spark plug. You've actually got the electrode that goes through it down from where the spark coil attaches to it through the porcelain, and then there's a little resistor inside it, and then there's the electrode, and along with a spring inside there. They have a tendency sometimes not to work. New, NEW, never ever worked. But that's one of the things we see. So Champion spark plugs make a 1-piece that won't break in there if you leave it more than 60,000 miles, but they have a tendency to misfire and you end up changing them. I bet you I've put easily, just this year alone, probably 50 sets of spark plugs in cars, and out of that 50 set of spark plugs in there, I probably got 5 to 10 of them that came back easily. That's 10%, 5 of them. So easily 10 of them coming back, which is about 20%, came back during the first 6 months with a misfire in it. So we did some research on it and finally found out that Ford Autolite makes a spark plug, a redesigned spark plug that's not supposed to break off the cylinder head. So please use that spark plug along with boots. But you've put the intake valve cleaner or General Motors top engine cleaner in it, and you let it sit in it all night long. Fire it up the next morning, let it run for about 2 minutes, just enough that the intake manifolds are getting warm that you can't keep your hands on it. That's all you need to do. And then by the time you cut it off, and after 10 minutes, you can touch the intake manifolds. It's cooled down, so you didn't get it very, very hot at all. Just enough to burn that IVC cleaner out of it, that intake valve cleaner or that carbon cleaner or whatever it is, just enough to burn that out. And that's what we're trying to do. And then what we do is, most people will say, well, I'll take the spark plug coil out and I'll put a socket in there and I'll take my ratchet and I'll gently work it both ways to get it out. That's what that's what the normal person would think. It don't work like that. You do that, it's going to break. The spark plug will break. I can just about guarantee it. I don't know, even if you use the intake valve cleaner, the General Motors top engine cleaner, no matter how careful you are by hand, they have a tendency to break. What we've developed, along with talking to other technicians over the years and on the internet from International Automotive Technicians Network or on Identifix and talking to other technicians back and forth, we found out if we will put a socket on that spark plug with a swivel that we can put an impact gun on, a 3/8 impact gun. It's a little smaller, but it's an impact gun. They come right out. They don't break. I've never seen anything like it. Matter of fact, my general manager that came to work here, used to work for me years ago, came back to work, and he says, man, he says, there was a car out there, it's got a 5.4 engine in it, and they want to put spark plugs in it, and it's got 150,000 miles on it. Spark plugs have never been changed. He says, I know they're going to break. And I said, yeah, no big deal, we can take care of it. And he said, yeah, I know we can take care of it. I just hate having to work on them, especially if they break, because, well, they get so expensive, and it's just so much time and labor. I said, they won't break. He said, yeah, they're going to break. I said, no, they're not going to break. I have a trick. And I explained to him the trick by using intake valve cleaner or General Motors top engine cleaner, letting the car sit overnight, removing the coils, changing the boots, which is standard procedure, but taking an impact gun. This is something they tell you in school. This is one of the first things I learned in class. Never, ever take spark plugs out with an impact gun. Put them on there. The vibration shocks the carbon and makes it fall off and pulls the spark plug right out. I know if you're listening to me and you're a technician, you're going, that boy ain't right. He's in QR, he's not quite right, because he's talking about using an impact gun. Honest to goodness, if you got a 5.4 3-valve engine that's from 2004 to 2008, and you do what I'm telling you to do, and you got a 3/8 impact air ratchet, and I'm not talking about impact gun, not an air ratchet. I need something that's got banging. I need something that's got at least 150 pounds of torque on it. You put that on there, as soon as you hit it, it shatters the carbon off and the spark plug comes right out in one piece. It doesn't break. And the reason I know it works is we developed that, and then we took my least experienced technician about 3 years ago, and I said, you're going to do it this way, and let's see what happens. Well, he pulled the spark plugs out and didn't break a one. And he said, yeah, they came right out, no big deal. What's supposed to happen? And everybody just kind of looked in amazement at him and go, it works? And I said, yeah, it's going to work. And we've done several. I bet you we've done hundreds of these over the years, changed hundreds of spark plugs. And I don't think I've broken a spark plug in the last 5 years. Not on these. We used to break them all the time. Matter of fact, my general manager came back to work for me. He says, I hate these because I'm always breaking a spark plug in it. And I said, nope, I'm going to show you how. And if you don't, if you want to see more about it, or if you don't believe this is how it works, it does work. Now, we can't guarantee you every time we pull one out they're not going to break, but we've had very, very, very good luck saving customers money over the years with the 2004 to 2008 5.4 liter Triton engine that comes in a Ford engine that has a 3-valve in it. If we do it that way, I haven't had to charge the customers $100 extra a hole or remove the cylinder head or do anything super invasive. Now, is it a tough job to do? Yeah, it's not exactly easy. You got to remove the computer and the harness and a lot of stuff out of the way to get to these spark plugs. But you know what? It's a heck of a lot easier than having to pull a cylinder head off or put this special tool and tap down to pull it out and not worry about bending a valve when you do this, because if you do it wrong, you can bend the valve. If you do it wrong, you can end up putting pieces of this trash down on top of the combustion chamber and do damage to the piston. So there's a lot of little tricks you got to be careful about, but this is one of the tricks over the last, I've been in business since 1980. And this is one of the only tricks that I know that defies common sense, and that you would think so, and for changing spark plugs. We were taught never to use an impact gun. We were taught never to remove spark plugs from an engine that was warm. It should always be at ambient. All these things are just, we don't, if you do that, the spark plug will break off. Honest to goodness. Now, that doesn't mean your technician is going to follow my procedure. You'll be surprised how many technicians refuse to do what I say. And then they end up spending hours pulling the spark plug out and what's left of it, and they just don't see the sense in it. They don't see how that would work. Well, I've demonstrated over and over and over and over again to my technicians and to customers, and we tell them, I said, look, we can pretty well guarantee we're not going to break the spark plug out if you let us have the car overnight. But if you bring the car to me and say, I want it done today, and you bring it in the morning, you expect to pick it up that afternoon, yeah, you'll get it back, but I'm going to end up pulling spark plugs out, even if I do everything I'm talking about. Let the thing sit. But if it can't sit overnight for at least 12 hours with this stuff in there to loosen the carbon, there's no guarantee you're not going to break a spark plug off, because that carbon gets right around that long neck and it grabs a hold of it and it breaks off, snaps it right off the spark plug. So to avoid that, make sure you use intake valve cleaner by CRC. They make that. You can buy it, spray it in there, or use General Motors top engine cleaner and suck it in the engine and let it sit overnight. Whatever you do, you've got to do something to break the carbon loose. Second thing is fire the engine up. Just break the cold off of it, just enough to break that solution up and get it to burn out. And then use an impact gun, not an impact ratchet, not an air ratchet, but an impact gun that has about 150 pounds of torque or higher, 3/8 model, and get in there and rattle it out. That's exactly what you're doing. You're rattling the spark plug out. Just the opposite of what we were taught in school, but it really, really works. Hey, this is James Morris. We'll be right back. If you got a car question, give us a call about your 5.4, or if you just want to talk about anything, we'll be right back.
If you want the best deal in town for tires, you need to call Baytown Tires at 873-8900.
Hanson and the guys at Baytown Tires take pride in serving Panama City for over 20 years. Baytown Tires on Highway 98 in St. Andrews. All service work backed by a nationwide warranty.
Water is too powerful to fight alone. Mr. Router Plumbing. Sink, shower, and toilet emergency drain services.
Fall is here. Kids are in school. Holidays are around the corner. Time to visit friends and family. Give us a call, 850-763-0555 for your free AAA safety inspection.
Part of what I'd like to let you know is what we do and how we work our system. Basically, we've got about 700 stocking dealers scattered around the 15 counties here in the Big Bend area of the state. I run a fleet of trucks, vans, and what we call hotshot vehicles to deliver to our dealers quickly so they can help service you as fast and efficiently as they can. Provide timely and efficient service and We're there to take care of our dealers, who in turn can take care of their customers.
All right, welcome back. We talked a little bit about the 5.4 getting spark plugs out, but something that a lot of people don't know about is marrying parts to their car. No, you don't have to marry spark plugs and coils to a car, but there's something very similar to it. If you have certain diesel engines out there, say an injector goes bad, you have to marry that injector to that engine. I'm not talking about us installing it, clamping it all down. You have to electronically marry it. You have to go to the scanner and type in the serial number that's on that injector to match to the car. Say, this is the number on this car. That way it knows exactly how much fuel to send, because that injector has been rated and flow tested. That's what those codes on there mean. This is how much it sends it idle at so much RPM. So this is a calibrated injector. That's something you have to marry to a vehicle. A lot of people don't realize that. And you need to do it before you install the injectors. If not, the technician is pulling everything apart and trying to get the numbers down by looking at a mirror upside down on them. So it makes the job a lot harder. You just can't go and buy parts anymore and stick on a car and expect them to work. All right, you what? Throttle body. Most common thing out there that I can think of. Customer gets that dreaded lightning bolt on their car, the dreaded lightning bolt symbol. They go, oh, I'll take it to a shop, I'll take it to XYZ parts store, and you got a throttle body code, and they'll say, well, let's sell you a throttle body. So they put a throttle body on there, and the car starts up and runs, it just won't go anywhere. It'll just idle, it won't go anywhere. The reason is because that car needs to have that part married to the car. It needs to know, is this a federal emissions car? Is it a California emissions car? Is it, it needs to know all these things, and it has to make sure that VIN number matches that car. If it doesn't do that, it's not going to work, because it has to make sure, because that same part will fit so many different car engines in so many different parts of the country that they say, okay, this one part, like one computer. I know General Motors makes one computer that must fit 100 different cars, from V8s to 4 cylinders, and they have to be programmed to make them work. That way they don't spend so much money making a lot of hardware parts. Are able to just do the electronics to make things cheaper, make things more convenient, except when you're working on your own car. That's not very convenient if you don't have the equipment. But we see it all the time, whether it's throttle bodies, whether it's EGR valves, whether it's reprogramming. Here's something that a lot of people, I hear them call all the time. I have a check engine light for an EGR valve, or I have a check engine light for this, or I have a check engine light for that, and I want to change that part. What's it going to cost to fix it? And I look at him and go, I will not give you a price, because I doubt seriously that's going to fix your car. Well, I took it to a shop and they said that's what it's going to cost to fix it. Well, if they're adamant like that, I said, well, then you need to have that shop fix it. But here's what I know, and one of the things I found out, changing parts a lot of times won't fix the car, even though it says it will, or at least what your parts store says it will, because a lot of times it just won't work because it doesn't understand the parameters. The parameters have changed on the computer since it was new, and sometimes it just requires to fix the car just to update the computer program. And when I say update the computer program, I'm not talking about relearn something by, putting it in gear or something that it can be done. I'm talking about completely wiping out everything that's stored in the computer and put to a blank slate, and putting in fresh new data all the way across it, to where everything is current to 2019, almost 2019, to today's standards. Because what happens when a car first gets made, I've talked to Mark Sarlo, automotive engineer, about this. They have a kind of like a drop dead date. They say, okay, everything we're going to do to this car has to be done by June of 2018. Well, June 2018 is done. All those cars that are produced have that programming in them, and everything seems fine. And they say, this is how it's going to be. But then they may notice when the car is put together and they actually put it out on the market, customers may complain about different problems, maybe shifting quality, maybe idle quality, maybe who knows, air conditioning. I mean, there's just so many things that's controlled, and they go, we missed that, we need to do programming. And a lot of times under warranty, they will take care of it. They will sit there and go, oh yeah, we've run across this problem before, there's a reprogramming on it, boom, 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 it's done. And that's no big deal. That's take care of it. But once a car gets out of warranty after 3 years, 36,000 miles, or whatever the case may be, then that problem raises its head. The customer gets a code, say it's out of warranty for an EGR valve or throttle body or whatever the case may be. And the customer says, well, I'm pretty mechanically inclined. Let me go change that part. So they go change that part, clear the code, put it back together. Problem still comes back a week later. They shake their head and go, what did I do wrong? I can't understand. So they take it to a shop. The shop looks at it, changes the part again, and the light comes back on again. Now the customer's super frustrated. Here's what's going on. Before you change any part or have any part changed by a shop, ask them, is there a reprogramming for this problem? Chrysler Motor Company, which is Fiat now, before you change any part on a Chrysler, we have a Fiat back there in the back that's got a transmission problem. The first thing we did before we went into the transmission was we verified that it had the latest, current, greatest update on it. Because if you don't have it, it ain't going to work. So we went to the Chrysler's website with our computer, looked at it. Yep, that is a current, bona fide. That is what we need for the update for this transmission. Everything is up to date. Drove the car and we were getting erratic. We were getting poor performance. If torque converter would be locked out where it wouldn't go in. Just weird things like that. And the customer already had the transmission computer changed by the manufacturer about a month or two ago. And I told him, I said, look, if you've had the manufacturer's computer, if they changed it, I'm sure they updated it. I'm sure it's right, but we're going to check it anyway. And he said, but if that's the case, then the problem is going to be not in the transmission controller, it's going to be in the solenoids themselves. And then the customer says, this car was in a flood. And I said, it was. Anytime a car is in a flood, all bets are off. What's wrong with it? Sure enough, we tore it down, pulled that valve body apart, and the actual valve body was all rusty. I mean, there was rust deposits all over it. And I said, I think we found our problem. Let's change this valve body and see what happens. So that's what we have to do. And this car only had 30,000 miles on it, 36,000 miles out of warranty. And that's what happens. Anyway, I got a car question right here. Maybe I can't read that. It says, Chris for the 69 Impala. That's what I thought it said there. Chris, you've got something so old, most people aren't that old anymore. So tell me about your 69 Impala. Chris, are you there? I can't hear you. Hello, Chris. Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, what is your question, sir?
I have a 69 Impala, and when I drive, I have oil coming out of the valve covers and shooting out of the dipstick.
You have oil. Okay, well, that tells me your PCV system stopped up tight, and you've got a lot of blow-by. Now, do you know where the PCV valve is in this vehicle?
Yes, no matter what, when I crank it up, the oil just spills out of it.
All right. Now, when you crank the car up, and if the car is running at idle, and you take the PCV valve off and put your finger on it, does it have vacuum on it, or is there no vacuum?
Oh, yeah, it has a real excessive blow-by. It just pours, literally it pours quartz oil out really fast.
Well, now, that means you've got a lot of blow-by, right? And blow-by is caused by rings, gases getting around the rings, and or excessive blow-by can be caused by the PCV valve. And this car in 1968 was the first year cars came out with PCV valves, according to the Federal Clean Air Act of that year. And that was the very first year, if I'm not mistaken, that PCV valves came out. And 90% of the problem with cars squirting oil out everything is because of excessive blow-by and or a clogged PCV system, positive crankcase ventilation. That's what you need to check first, Chris, but it's a 69, and when the car is running, does it put a lot of blue smoke out the tailpipe when it's going down the highway? He dropped off. All right, he dropped off. My wife said he hung up. Sometimes people don't like to hear the truth. I don't know what it is. That's the only thing I can figure out. I try to explain to them about it, and, well, some people have preconceived ideas how things work. And that's what happens. If you've got a car that's got blow-by coming out of, blowing things out of it, it's because you've got rings that are broken or something that's allowing a lot of back pressure inside the crankcase to push the oil out. And that's either rings and or a positive crankcase ventilation system that does not work properly. And that can be something as simple as changing a hose and taking the bottom of the carburetor off, cleaning all the carbon out of the bottom of the carburetor on the 69, sticking it back on, making sure that hose is good, and putting a new PCV valve on. Might be something as simple as that. I just don't know. But anyway, that's one of the things we try to do here on the show, is help people out. And some people, well, some people you can't help. Some people are just past that point. But if anyone has a 69 Impala, you better know something about a car, or you don't, that's probably basic 101 when it comes to car repair. If my oil won't stay in a car, why will it not stay in a car? Either it's blowing it out or it's leaking it out. And if it's leaking it out, there's only 2 or 3 things that can cause it to leak, and only 2 or 3 things that can blow it out. But anyway, if you've got a car question, give us a call, 850-763-0555. And if we give you the answer, we'd like to have you call back in a few days to tell us, hey, yeah, that fixed it. Or if it didn't fix it, give us another chance to help you out again. It's not like, we're taking your money from you. This is to help you. It's for entertainment purposes. We want to help you get answers to help you get your car fixed. A 69 car is a pretty old car. Matter of fact, in 1969, I was, what was I doing? I wasn't very old at that time. I was probably about 15 years old, 14, 15 years old. But I learned, that's when I was working on cars. I remember my mama's, she bought a 1969 Dodge Coronet 440. Had a 318 engine in it. I thought that was the hottest looking car I'd ever seen. Just didn't have a lot of power compared to the Super Bs back there with the 440 Magnums and 383s on them. But still, it was a nice looking car. But that was the very first year, if I'm not mistaken, in 1968 or 69, they came out with PCV valves to put in cars. Before that time, we just had, you see a car sitting at a red light and you see smoke coming out the bottom, little puffs of smoke. And that was because it didn't have a positive crankcase ventilation system. Hey, this is James Morris. If you got a car question, we only got about a minute or so left, give us a call. There's no dumb question. The only dumb question is the one you ask and don't listen to. That would be a dumb question if you ask a question and don't hang around to get the answer. So give us a call, 850-763-0555. And let's see if we can point you in the right direction. But cars have come a long way from 69. Back then in 69, we had points and condensers and spark plugs and wires. And by 1972 on Chrysler, they went to electronic ignition. By 1974, General Motors had gone to electronic ignition, and so had Ford. So by 1974, all cars were electronic ignition that I know of. There were the few import cars like Nissans, or I called them Datsuns back there, that didn't get electronic ignition probably to about 1978 or 79. But by 1980, just about everything had an electronic ignition in it. And by I would say by 1985 to 87, just about every car out there was fuel injected. And then by I shouldn't say all, but a lot of cars were fuel injected by 87, 89. And then by 1995, the last General Motors car that I know that had a carburetor was 87. And that was a Cadillac Fleetwood. That went away in 1987, was the last year of feedback carburetors on General Motors cars. And by 1988, everything was fuel injection, throttle body fuel injection, crossfire fuel injection, multi-port fuel injection. It was one of those fuel injection systems out there. And believe it or not, fuel injection is a lot easier to work on than carburetors. It gives you better fuel mileage, better performance, better power, and better fuel economy. Hey, this is James Morris. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you've got a car question, write me at james@masterautotech.com. Fall is here. Kids are in school. Holidays are around the corner. Time to visit friends and family. Give us a call, 850-763-0555 for your free AAA safety inspection.
We fix it right, guaranteed. Beep, 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 beep.